Mobile Armored Strike Command, with a K, or M.A.S.K, started in 1985, and the toy line was a decent hit for Kenner. Not Star Wars big, but you know, a win nonetheless. The idea of more utilitarian but cool cars and trucks turning into fantastical battle machines definitely captured the imagination, but the candle that burns twice as bright lasts half as long. By 1987, the toy line was kind of on thin ice. Wave 3 saw the racing series. Instead of classic cars, trucks, and jeeps, we now have Formula Racers. Where does this leave Miles Mayhem? After all, he's starting to get up there in age. What's a supervillain to do? Retire? Pass the torch? Hell no. He decided to trade in the Switchblade, get some hair plugs, and start cruising in his bitchin' new ride, the Buzzard. Also, his brother was there. This is 1987's Kenner M.A.S.K Buzzard, piloted by Miles Mayhem and his twin brother Maximus. It's kind of like a middle-aged Tomax and Zaymot. So Miles and Maximus are both in these purple and blue racing jumpsuits, and Miles is still keeping things on point with all the gold tassels and medals, and hey, he's got enough to share with his brother too. What separates the two visually is the fact that each jumpsuit is inverted and Maximus has a monocle, because he's keeping it real with the Burgess Meredith style guide. I think it's pretty hilarious that Miles has had a heretofore unseen twin brother that is ever so slightly more cartoonishly evil. It's even in his name, Maximus Mayhem. I mean, what if Matt Tracker had a brother? Oh wait, no, he did, and Miles killed him. I guess it's like poetry, it rhymes. Anyway, these two come with brand new masks, the Flexor and the Deep Freeze. I can't really tell which one's which. The Flexor mask can create kinetic barriers, which are, well, bouncy, and the Deep Freeze mask freezes stuff. Pretty self-explanatory. I do like the detail work on these masks, as the silhouette and finer details kind of resemble a bird skull, with the large beak in the middle. It's pretty fitting considering that the Formula 1 car is called the Buzzard. Now, the Buzzard is a fairly generic F1 racer. It's kind of like the mind's eye approximation of a formula. It's recognizable, but nothing specific. There's design elements reminiscent of both the Renault and the Ligier cars, especially considering that it's very low to the ground and very wide. But I'm sure you've noticed that much like Miles himself, this car is extra thick. And that's because it's more than meets the eye. Crap, we might not be able to use that. There's more to it than appears. I'm sure you've noticed that there's already a pilot in the center, and that's because Miles and Maximus actually go into these side canopies. Both the color palette and the way the figures go into the vehicle kind of remind me of the Doom Mobile or Doom Cycle from Secret Wars. The conversion for the Buzzard is virtually all located on these gold plastic buttons behind the canopy, and they're kind of awkward to activate on camera, so we're just gonna cut to them being launched. The Buzzard splits into 3 separate vehicles. You get 2 of these motorcycle-looking dealies, as well as this center jet. These motorcycles kind of resemble the Bat Pod from the Dark Knight series, except like 30 years earlier. They're very basic, and when you trigger the mechanism in the center, it actually makes the seats slide up a little bit so that Miles and Maximus can poke their heads out. The center section of the formula also has a secondary transformation. Pressing the second button pops out some wings. And you can tell that this is a drone because the little head sculpted under the pilot seat is actually a little robot head. It's pretty cute. I do wish that this was removable so you could fit a normal figure in there, but maybe that's asking just a little too much. After all, it's very narrow already, so it'd be very difficult to fit in a figure and all of the spring-loaded gimmicks. Having the Formula car turn into a jet of some kind is actually very clever, considering that Formula racers and virtually all the racers that are meant to go into the Grand Prix are meant to be as aerodynamic as possible, so it's not too far of a stretch to make that into a jet. The last feature is the most half-baked. The rear spoiler can become a hang glider. That's it, nothing special. I'm not going to talk about Miles Mayhem's character because I already did that in a 15-minute video all about his war against spacemen and space aliens and his involvement with the Transformers. Instead, I'm going to talk about one of my pet peeves or nitpicks with the M.A.S.K franchise. Something that I've noticed studying this toy line is that there are way too many names being dropped and thrown around. What do I mean by this? Well, let me get you an example from a rival toy line. See, in G.I. Joe, there's Storm Shadow, but you get to learn his real name is Thomas Arashikage, Tommy to his friends. Short, sweet, simple. But let's look at M.A.S.K. We've got Miles Mayhem, but his code name is Wolf, even though he runs a snake-themed organization, and his mask is the Viper, and his vehicle is the Switchblade. And we're not counting the other masks and vehicles that he has. So that's 4 different names right there that are all meant to be synonymous with the main villain. Matt Tracker, his code name is Hunter, his vehicle's the Thunderhawk, and his mask is Spectrum. In my opinion, M.A.S.K really should have streamlined this. This isn't Bionicle where there's 1,000 different masks to collect that all have elemental powers. Keep it simple. Another example, Vanessa Warfield, codename Ice Queen, mask Whip, vehicle Manta. Just pick one of those. Clearly the winner is Ice Queen. And that kind of goes into another problem I have with M.A.S.K, and that's the fact that it's very unfocused with its aesthetic motifs. I mean, back to Miles Mayhem, why is the dude codenamed Wolf if he runs a snake-themed military insurgency? Like, sure, the Switchblade might be carte blanche, but that works. The Outlaw is clearly snake-themed, the Buzzard is bird-themed, the Wolf Beast is wolf-themed, hell, he's got a big scarab on his chest in the Wolf Beast version, so just choose a lane and keep to it. This is just my opinion about a 40-year-old toy line that will probably never get a reboot, but if I was in charge of things, I would have either kept Venom very clearly snake-themed, or Miles Mayhem's crew avian-themed, which would have been a really good contrast. So many of the heroic teams in toy lines are Eagle-themed. Eagle Force, G.I. Joe. Miles has this paramilitary wannabe dictator vibe. Of course he would think he's the hero. Having him be avian-themed would have been a great contrast against M.A.S.K, which is much more utilitarian, pedestrian, and everyman. That's literally just thoughts off the top of my head, totally unscripted, and just me overthinking things. Look, back to the Buzzard. The Buzzard is actually a really fun toy, and it has a very striking appearance, and I really do like the bird skull motif on Miles and Maximus Mayhem. And something that's kind of funny is it kind of feels like a portent to the split-second vehicles, which are the last wave of M.A.S.K. There are a few other vehicles before the final wave that are also modular, but this really does feel like a prototype for the split-seconds. It was such a good idea that it killed the toy line. Okay, that's a little harsh, but it did get sequestered to Europe and then quietly fizzled out.